Hi, I'm Laura Flanders of The Laura Flanders Show, where I interview the best thinkers and doers of our time. On TV, the show premieres Sundays at 11:30 Eastern on PBS World and at the Laura Flanders Show YouTube channel. You can join my guests and me every week there in the live viewing party, and then catch us all week on public television stations. Prefer to listen? Find us on a radio station near you or subscribe to the free podcast. You'll find listings and ways to subscribe at lauraflanders.org. That's also where you'll receive my regular commentaries. I call them the F word. Here's this week's. Democratic campaign fundraisers are complaining about cable news. The reporting they rely on to attract attention and stir giving dried up, they say, when U.S. news networks switched their attention from politics in the midterms to Queen Elizabeth's death. How do you spark alarm, inform the public, prod people to act if the media aren't covering the news? Political fundraisers griped to the press this week. We need Americans to care about the future and get involved, a spokesman for the Democratic senatorial campaign told the New York Times. It's a problem social movements in the U.S. have faced for decades, of course, and met none of the same sympathy from the press. Even the week of the Queen's funeral, for example, when coverage quashed all other news. In the UK, an uprising against police violence was taking place. On the Saturday before the funeral, the family of 24-year-old rapper Chris Kaba weren't grieving their queen. They were holding a national day of action. Kaba, who was unarmed when he was shot by police in London September 5th, died in hospital from his wounds, and his family are calling for a murder investigation. They question whether their son would have died if he hadn't been black. On September 17th, just days before the royal funeral, protesters took to the streets in cities across the UK, and Kaba's family led a mass rally outside Scotland Yard. The headquarters of London's police is just a mile away from Buckingham Palace. The cries of the family could probably have been heard by the mourners lined up just across the river to see the Queen's casket, and certainly by the U.S. news reporters who were covering that famous line. But was it? I can find no mention of Chris Kaba's name anywhere in the New York Times, and that wouldn't be unusual. As documented by groups like the media watch group FAIR, social movements, as compared to political campaigns, have a famously hard time making it into our papers of record, let alone onto cable news in this country. Even when they're reported on, they're rarely put in any sort of international context. Might it have been interesting to connect the dots between protest movements in the UK with those in the US, especially on a topic as transatlantic as the continuing legacy and impact of white supremacy? Especially when, let's face it, mobs of U.S. reporters were there on site for once, and they'd been endlessly covering the same story for a week. To return to the complaint of the Democratic fundraiser, how do you spark alarm, inform the public, and prod people to act in a news vacuum? It's a problem social justice groups face, not 1 week a year, but year in, year out. To find our coverage of social justice movements all across this country on public television and radio and as a podcast, you can find it all at lauraflanders.org. And thanks.